I will always remember that night, the night that has haunted me for the rest of my life. I was just a child then, staying at my grandparents' house in the countryside. It was an old wooden house surrounded by dense forests, with neighbors far and few between. The nights were especially quiet. My grandparents always said I was safe here, but I always felt like there was something lurking in the house that shouldn't be there. That night, I was sleeping alone in the upstairs bedroom, while my grandparents' room was downstairs. On the small wooden table beside my bed sat an old-fashioned lamp. I used to leave it on before falling asleep, but my grandmother always reminded me, "Turn off the light when you sleep. It'll help you sleep better." So, I turned it off, plunging the room into darkness. The window was open, and the night breeze carried the damp scent of the forest. I wrapped myself tightly in the blanket and stared at the ceiling, trying to fall asleep quickly. The sounds of the night always made me uneasy: the wind, the rustling of leaves, and the occasional cries of unknown animals. In that environment, I always felt like something was watching me from outside the window. But every time I mustered the courage to pull back the curtains, I only saw the pitch-black forest, with nothing there. Just as I was drifting off to sleep, I heard a faint scratching sound, like something rubbing against the glass. I held my breath, my heart racing, and turned to look at the window. The curtains swayed slightly, as if something was outside. I told myself it was just the wind, but this time the sound was more like fingernails scraping against the glass, slow and deliberate. I didn't dare move, my eyes fixed on the window, waiting for the sound to stop, but instead of fading, it grew louder. Then, I saw something moving behind the curtains, long, slender fingers slowly parting them. Fear consumed me. My breathing quickened, and my heart felt like it was about to burst out of my chest. The curtains were pulled open completely, and a grotesque face emerged from the darkness. It was a face that seemed to blend human and beast, its eyes hollow, its mouth stretched wide, revealing sharp teeth. It stared at me, as if confirming whether I was awake, but that wasn't the only face. More faces appeared at the window, one after another. Their arms were long and thin, ending in hook-like claws. They pressed against each other, writhing as if eager to enter the room. I was frozen in place, my eyes locked on the monsters. I wanted to scream, but my throat felt like it was being choked, and no sound came out. I could only curl up under the blanket, praying that this was just a nightmare. One of the creatures slowly extended its clawed hand into the room, its fingers lightly brushing against the edge of the bed. Its arm was unnaturally flexible, as if it had no bones, and it inched closer to me. I closed my eyes in despair, repeating to myself, "This isn't real, this isn't real." Suddenly, my grandfather's voice came from downstairs. "Aaron, are you still awake?" The sound instantly changed the atmosphere in the room. The monsters seemed to sense some kind of threat, their movements stiffening. Then, one by one, they retreated from the window and vanished into the darkness. The curtains fell back into place, as if nothing had happened. My body was still paralyzed. It took me a few seconds to realize I was drenched in cold sweat, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might explode. I tried to calm myself with deep breaths. My grandfather called out again from downstairs, and I finally snapped out of it, trembling as I got out of bed and rushed downstairs. My grandfather frowned when he saw my panicked state. "What's wrong?" I shivered, wanting to tell him everything I had just seen. But when I looked back up the stairs, the window was closed, the curtains hanging still, and the room was silent, as if the terrifying scene had been nothing but a figment of my imagination. My grandmother gently comforted me. "It was just a nightmare. You're okay." She let me sleep on the couch downstairs and covered me with a blanket. I lay there, my eyes wide open, afraid that if I closed them, the monsters would return. I didn't sleep a wink that night. The next morning, I went back to my room to see if there was anything unusual about the window from the night before. But the window was clean, with no scratches, and there were no signs of any creatures having entered. Everything seemed normal, as if the previous night had been nothing but a dream. However, when I approached the window, I noticed a few long, thin claw marks on the windowsill, as if something had been there. I stared at the marks, a chill running down my spine. Deep down, I knew it hadn't been a dream. From that day on, I never dared to sleep alone in that room again. Every night, I made sure the windows were locked and the curtains were tightly drawn. The house sat on the edge of a small town and had stood there for over 50 years. After Grandma passed away, it remained empty. No one wanted to live in it. Mom asked me to go sort through her belongings, said we needed to sell the place. After all, no one was ever going to live there again. Inside, the house was old, but surprisingly well preserved. The wooden banister along the staircase had been polished smooth by time, and the green floral wallpaper was faded and peeling, carrying a heavy scent of mildew. The crystal chandelier still hung in the living room. The bulbs were dim, but they still cast enough light to fill the room. The moment I stepped inside, a strange unease settled over me, like something of Grandma's still lingered in the air. I walked up the stairs and opened the door to her bedroom. A musty wave of perfume hit me, thick with dampness and dust. The room was nearly untouched. Her favorite pearl necklace and perfume bottle still sat on the vanity, just like she'd left them. In the corner were several old leather suitcases stuffed with clothes and yellowed letters. As I rummaged through them, I found something tucked all the way at the bottom, a worn-out photo album. Most of the pictures were from Grandma's younger days, old black and whites that felt distant and unfamiliar. But when I turned to the last page, I froze. It was a photo taken right in front of the staircase. Grandma stood in the foreground, wearing the plaid coat she'd always loved, and that same pearl necklace from the vanity. She was smiling, but there was something deeply wrong with that smile. Her facial features were blurred, almost smeared, as if something had wiped her face away in the instant the photo was taken. And in the shadows behind her, near the top of the stairs, there was a vague, dark shape, indistinct, but unmistakably there, like something watching. I stared at the photo for a long time, and childhood memories began creeping back. I used to live in this house for a while when I was little, and I remember hearing strange sounds on the stairs at night, soft, careful footsteps. Every time I asked Grandma about it, she'd smile and pat my head, saying, "It's just an old house, sweetheart. Nothing to be scared of." But now, thinking back on it, her smile had always felt off, like she was hiding something. Still holding the photo, I walked to the top of the stairs and looked around. Everything in the photo matched perfectly except for one thing. There was nothing on the stairs. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was there, just out of sight, watching me. Dusk was falling. I decided to finish quickly and get out of there. I slipped the photo album into my backpack and headed back downstairs to keep sorting through Grandma's things. As I bent down to open an old cabinet in the living room, a dull thump echoed from the floor above, like someone had stepped on one of the creaking wooden planks. My heart jumped. I spun around. Nothing, I told myself, was just the usual sounds of an aging house. But as I turned back to the cabinet, a chill ran down my spine. That feeling again, like invisible eyes were fixed on me. I held my breath and slowly turned around. There was nothing on the stairs. Just the dim light casting long shadows across the hallway. But I knew what I'd heard. I worked faster after that, desperate to leave. When I bent down to pick up the album I dropped, my gaze caught the mirror beside the cabinet, an old, tall mirror with an ornate frame. And in it, I saw someone standing on the staircase. A woman, wearing a dark plaid coat, standing motionless at the landing. Her head was bowed slightly, her mouth curled into a chilling, twisted smile. She had no eyes, only a blurred, featureless face. I froze. My body locked up, cold sweat trickling down my spine. I didn't even dare blink, afraid the image might change or worse, move. But when I finally forced myself to look up at the stairs, they were empty. The woman and the reflection were gone. I slammed the album shut, heart racing, and decided I was done. I stuffed what I could into my bag, shut off the living room light, and headed for the door. Just as I reached for the doorknob, I heard it. A soft voice, right behind me. "You're back." It was Grandma's voice. I whipped around. The living room light flickered, and the chandelier above swayed slightly. But the room was empty. The stairs were still and silent. On the table, the photo album sat open, and the picture her blurred face still wore that same haunting smile. I yanked the door open and bolted outside. Not until I was in the car did I realize how cold I was. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. I started the engine and drove away, never once looking back. A few days later, I brought the album home with me. I thought about burning it just to be safe. But when I finally worked up the nerve to open it again, that photo was gone. The page where it should have been was blank, like it had never existed at all. I arrived at my grandparents' house on a Thursday evening in the middle of summer. The old two-story house sat in a small coastal village. Its weather-beaten walls made of packed earth and wood. Every step on the stairs creaked, and the air always carried a damp, musty smell, like something slowly rotting behind the walls. The windows were so grimy, it was hard to see outside. The back room had a large sofa, and, beside it, an old red metal chest rectangular, its paint peeling, its corners slightly warped as if something heavy had once crushed it. The lid never quite sat flush. Inside, I assumed, were just old photos, handwritten letters, or maybe forgotten toys. That night, while cooking dinner in the kitchen, directly below that room, I heard a short, sharp sound from upstairs like air escaping from the sofa. "I thought that sofa didn't have any cushions left," I said. My brother waved a hand. "They were taken out years ago. It's just a frame now." But old things make noises, even when they shouldn't. I decided to check the back room. My brother didn't respond. The room was simple: an iron ceiling lamp, an antique cabinet, and the sofa at the far end. Night had fallen fast. I flicked on the light and listened. Silence. Bored, I tugged the sofa forward slightly, checking behind it for whatever might have caused the noise. That's when the red chest shuddered as if something had knocked against it from inside. I reached for the edge of the chest, peeling back the old fabric covering it. Before I could finish, a withered hand slid out from the gap. I gasped, my pulse roaring in my ears, but my fingers closed around it on instinct. Cold, brittle, just bone and paper-thin skin. "It's a prop," I told myself. "A dummy." Then I lifted the lid halfway. A corpse slid out. It caught on the edge of the sofa, with a sickening, sticky sound. The back was blackened and green, the skin against the upholstery, seeping dark fluid. The entire sofa was damp with it, reeking of decay. The house's heat and humidity had let her fester inside that chest, like bread left too long in a sealed bag. The stench clung, no matter how much I scrubbed later. I stumbled back, my mind blank except for one repeating thought. "There's a dead woman in our chest." I bolted for my parents, stammering about the body. They rushed back with me, but when we reached the room, the chest was empty. No hand, no corpse, just a black, belt-like strip draped over the edge. I insisted she was still here, leading them further inside, but the room was undisturbed. The sofa sat untouched, except for one detail, a fresh indentation in the cushion, as if someone had just been sitting there. I quietly called Bal, an upperclassman who often helped clear out abandoned houses in the area. He'd seen his share of strange things in old homes. He arrived tense, his first question sharp. "Why did you open that chest?" I told him about the noise. Without a word, he lifted the lid halfway. A puff of dust-like gas hissed out, then stopped just as quickly. We decided to remove the chest. After that, the noises stopped. The woman never reappeared, but I still avoid that room. Even now, Just passing the doorway sends an unnatural chill down my spine.